Sam, the financial samurai. How are you, my friend?
Good, Larry. Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited to have you on. Real quick before we get started, how about a few just fun layup questions?
Yeah.
All right, so financial samurai.
Yeah.
Tell us about the name of that. How'd you come up with that one?
Well, I actually grew up in Osaka, Kobe, Japan for a couple years. My parents were stationed there as U.S. Foreign Service officers. So ever since I was a kid, I've loved Japanese culture, the food, the people, the respect. And I just thought, hey, why not Financial Samurai? That was also a domain name that was available back in 2009.
Nice.
Nobody came up with it. So I was like, all right, this is something that could have legs, and I love it.
I like that, man. That's very cool. What's your favorite Japanese dish back in the country?
Oh, I mean, I can eat Toro sashimi all day long. Just fat, tuna belly sushi. It's so good.
Nice. That sounds good, man.
It's
What
good.
do you miss about Japan the most?
I like the food. I would say the best Italian food is in Japan.
Wait, what?
The best steaks are in Japan. I mean, it's just unbelievable how they prepare dishes. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And then I also love the hot springs.
Hmm.
It's cool. Just like their bathing culture is really nice.
That's cool, man. Um,
Yeah.
what do you like to do for fun outside of doing obviously financial things? That's
Yeah.
obviously your passion. You're married with two kids, but what do you like to do outside of out of work and family for fun, just for yourself?
Well, I've been playing competitive tennis kind of since middle school. So I was playing USTA tennis leagues. It's really fun. We compete against other clubs around the city of San Francisco and the Bay Area. And then I play weekend softball. So fun.
Wow, you are busy.
Yeah.
Like the slow pitch, right?
Slow pitch. Yeah, try to balance the mental
Yeah.
and the physical, So try to do maybe 2-to-1 mental to physical, just to kind of stay sane and healthy.
So funny is I grew up playing baseball. I was like an average player. I wasn't great, but I wasn't terrible, but so right in between. But it's kind of funny, man. I did a softball league for a while. I've got four boys.
Hmm.
For like a minute. When I say a while, it was more like a minute. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be so easy, just rocking this underhand pitch.
Yeah.
And it took a bit for me to like, I would just get up there and just try to crush it, right? And I
Yeah.
would strike out. Like I just could
Oh,
not hit that thing. I'm like, what is going on? This thing, like I can see it. It's like right here in front of me. And like I just keep missing it. So I was so used to I take my kids to batting cages, we get in there and
yeah.
it's like the regular pitches, you can hit those. But like when it comes in at that arc, like it,
Yeah.
it took me like a little bit of time to get the hang of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got a hang of it eventually, right?
I
So,
did. Yeah, but
yeah.
it's so embarrassing. It's like you don't even want to walk back to the dugout after you've struck out.
Yeah.
It's just
And that's the thing, you just want to crush it.
yeah.
But unless you can hit it over 300 feet consistently, which is generally like the track line or the fence, I mean, strategically, it's about hitting those line drives and, those
Yeah.
gappers between first and second or whatever, like between outfield and infield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. You have two kids, 2.5, 5.5. Tell me
Yeah.
about them.
Oh, they're great. You don't know how much time you have until you have kids.
God. Yeah.
And, there's a great saying, have children and the money will come. And the reason why is once you have children, they're the most precious thing in your life. And so you want to be a better person. You want to earn enough money to provide, and you want to stay in better shape. So if you want to change your life for the better, have children, but also know that it's going to be the hardest thing you will ever do,
Mm.
being a dad.
You are so right. I remember before my oldest is 16, and I remember, we were just trying to make ends meet, paying off college loans and that kind of thing. And I was like, how in the world am I going to afford to pay for this kid? And
Yeah.
it was exactly that. The sense of urgency to make more money was tremendously there, right? And yeah, and the physical thing too. A lot of a lot of us, we always think, well, as soon as I have kids, that is the end of my physical health. and I would argue that I just turned 47 this year,
Yeah.
and I'm in the best shape that I've ever been in
Mm.
versus my 30s and all that. And my kids even asked me, they're like, why do you work out so much? Why do you eat so healthy? I was like, because I need to keep up with you people. Like,
Yeah.
four boys is no easy task, man. Like, I got to be
Uh,
on point with my health. I've got to be awake. I got to feel good. Like, and I ain't gonna be doing that if I'm sloughing around, not exercising, and eating Big Macs. It's just not
yeah,
gonna happen.
exactly.
So
Exactly. Got to keep up. And you want to, I mean, I just have like a real basic understanding in the sense that I just want to live long enough
yeah,
until they find someone. So I'm thinking maybe they'll find someone at 30. I had kids late. So I got to live until 70 and I'm 45 now. So 25 more years, gotta survive. Got to figure it out.
I think you'll be okay. Just, just, just,
You never know, but that's the goal.
just keep playing that tennis and
Yeah.
and all that good stuff. Just keep staying active. You've been married now for 14 years.
Yeah.
Uh, Give us some advice on 14 years of marriage. What would you tell your 2007 self? Like, if you could
Yeah.
sit down and have a conversation with him and give yourself some advice.
Yeah. Well, I would say the biggest thing I learned in a marriage is that there's no equality. And so as soon as you get it out of your mind that everything has to be 50-50, you got to do the labor 50-50, whatever, you're going to have a better relationship. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're stronger. So are you going to split lifting the luggage 50-50? No, you're the stronger one. You better lift the luggage in the overhead bin, right? Don't expect it to be 50-50. We all have our different strengths and weaknesses as partners. And so the separation of tasks is super important. Figure out what you're good at, what you enjoy, and separate those tasks. Don't feel like you need to do everything, because as soon as you start feeling like you have to do everything in the household, you got to make the money, you got to take care of your kids, you got to send them to this school for drop off and pick up. That gets really hairy real quick because you're thinking you got to be the better person or you got to make it 50-50. Separation of tasks and believe it actually not in 50-50.
100.
Not 100 in what you can do and
Yeah.
what you're able to do.
Yeah. I love that, man. So I want to obviously talk about your book, Buy This, Not That. But
Mm.
there's a whole premise behind this for you. And before we hit the record button, a big theme that came out was time and how
Hmm.
we can't get that back. So
Yeah.
share with us your journey that led to this book and actually this entire movement around Financial Samurai.
Well, it's interesting. When I first started in 1999 at Goldman Sachs, it was actually a dream job, but it was also a miserable job. From the very first day, I had to get in at 5:30 a.m. and then I had to leave after 7 p.m. because I had to connect with my colleagues in Asia who were just starting their day. So I knew right then and there that I couldn't last in a career for decades like my parents did in the US Foreign Service. So I decided to save and invest aggressively to give myself options by the time age 40 came that I could do something else or that I could just kick back or just travel or just relax. And so that's the irony of having a terrible job, a difficult job, is that it forces you to think about your money, think about options. And so I started Financial Samurai at the bottom of the financial crisis in July 2009 because I was afraid. I had saved and invested for 10 years and I lost 35, 40% of my net worth in just 6 months. And so I said, you know what? I better start Financial Samurai because this is an idea that was bouncing in my head since 2006 after I graduated from business school part-time. But I never started because I said, well, I got to focus on my job. But once the crisis came, I was like, well, there's no more excuses. Let's just start something. And then, funny enough, about 3 years later, I was able to leave my job permanently at the age of 34 because I had a severance package that paid for 5 to 6 years of living expenses. And I had something I really, really liked to do, which was Financial Samurai.
I read that in your bio. Like, you got to explain that one. How does somebody have a severance package that gives them that much of a runway?
Yeah. So the traditional wisdom is you figure out how to sell yourself to join a company. You interview, you talk about your strengths, maybe you humble brag a little bit about your weaknesses or whatever. you get the job. So negotiating a severance package is the opposite, but it's trying to make the situation a win-win for your employer. So you say, well, if you can give me a severance package, I will train a subordinate or I will find my replacement for the next 3 months. I will provide a seamless transition so that nothing drops off once I leave. And you'll probably save money because the new person will get paid less and probably be hungrier. Because if you're asking for a severance package, your employer knows your heart's not in it anymore. And the employer just wants people who want to be there, right? And so I was there for 11 years. And a part of my bonus every single year was paid in deferred cash and stock compensation, about 30%. So after you're there for 3 years at least, you have about a year's worth of compensation in deferred compensation. And so I knew if I left, I would lose all that deferred compensation and I would lose a private investment. The bank forced all employees, director level and above, to invest in during the bottom of the market in 2010. These were these toxic mortgage assets. And that had a 7-year payout. And so I said, look, let's try to work something out. I've been a loyal employee. I want to help the firm succeed. You know how hard it is to find a replacement. It might take 3 to 6 months, and it might take another 3 to 6 months to train them to be at my level. Let's work something out. And so they said, you know what, Sam, I agree with you. Thank you for your service. Let's figure something out. Here's a severance and all your deferred compensation. And that's how I did it.
Wow. So were you trained on any type of negotiation on that, or was this something you came up with on your own, or it's not your typical thing to negotiate on your way out?
Yeah. Well, business school, my favorite class was communications and negotiations.
Nice.
And then I just observed a lot of friends and colleagues get let go during the financial crisis, 2008, 2009. We went through like 5, 6, 7 rounds a year, and then a couple more rounds every year after that for the next 3 or 4 years. And so I talked to them and I asked them, are you okay? Can I help you find a job? What can I do for you? And then we talked about their severance, and many of them were like, hey, I'm good for 6 months, 1 year. They paid me a severance. And that idea clicked in my head and said, well, if I can negotiate a severance that paid for 3, 4, 5+ years of living expenses, that's kind of like buying time, because I thought I would last until age 40. So if I could get a severance package that could buy me 5 years of living expenses, that was kind of like me working until age 39, 40, but not really. And so I said, well, if I go for it, take that leap of faith and to do something new, something that I want, worst case scenario, 2, 3 years, it doesn't work out. I go back to work at age 36, 37, and I can probably still find employment at a reasonable rate.
Interesting. I'm curious though. Many people I've had on the podcast, the reason they're doing the business that they do, right? Like a passion project, for instance, it comes from a deep-seated why.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from maybe some experiences growing up and let's talk about the financial thing, right? So, well, real quick, just to side note, the reason I do Dad Edge, right, is because of how I grew up. And, it was a very, very tough childhood for me. I had several father figures that were in and out of my life. I didn't even actually meet and formulate a relationship with my biological father till I was 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy. But had several father figures come and go, and many of them were very toxic and abusive, and when I first started Dad Edge, I wasn't toxic or abusive, but I did not know what the heck to do, man. Just was so just felt completely and totally unarmed to take on, the fatherhood and husband and marriage and all that. And I wasn't only, someone who is the host of the podcast and still am to this day, but I'm still the student. So the cool thing about podcasts like this with you, right, is this beautiful continuation of learning, and that is my why. I just want to constantly learn so I can implement these things in my own life and then obviously serve the audience as well. But for you, with this drive and this motivation to create financial freedom and now to teach others how to do it as well, where does all this come from?
It comes from just understanding my mortality. Um, when I was 13, a close friend of mine died in a car accident. And I'll always remember coming back from summer vacation one day and calling his phone, and his mom picked up, and I said, "Hey, is Mark there?" And she said, "No, he died in a car accident." And it was really traumatic at 13 because I was just expecting to go skateboarding with him the very next day. And then 9/11 happened at the World Trade Center, and I was living just several blocks away from it. I was at the top of World Trade Center in January uh, and during 9/11, and then I left to go to San Francisco, and then the bombings happened. And then in 2008, I was in Mumbai, India, and just for this conference. And then 2 weeks later, terrorists came and shot up the hotel I was staying at, the Oberoi Hotel and the Taj Hotel in Mumbai. And so I thought to myself, I knew really early on, really quickly, how ephemeral life is, how precious life is. And so these incidences really drove home the desire for me to be financially independent as soon as possible, so that if I were to die an early death, I would have fewer regrets because I lived the life that I really wanted to live. And so, in terms of fatherhood, I wasn't sure I wanted to be a father, but once I left work, I had all this time and I was able to think and breathe and think what would be next and what would be great in my life. And so I thought about children, and we finally, after several years of trying, had our son in 2017. And I thought to myself, I wanted to have as much time as possible to raise him because I had a theory that, well, it's hard to be great at your job and be a great parent if you're working 60 plus hours a week, right? And so I kind of went all or nothing strategy. And in retrospect, I regret that because I had my first at 39, 39 and a half, almost 40. And because children are the most important thing in your life, you want them to be a part of your life for a greater percentage, right? So, because we start thinking about our mortality definitely once we're in our 40s. But the whole premise now is, I want as much time as possible to make up for that time that I might not have at the back end of my life to spend with them. Because I know at somewhere around age 12, 13, 14, they're just not going to want to hang out anymore. And they're going to want to hang out with their friends, right? It's totally logical. And so that's those are the reasons why, experiencing trauma and tragedy, and then also wanting to spend as much time as possible with my children.
You are not kidding, man. You know, you're really hitting the heart of men right now with your message, big time. I can't even tell you, how many men have older kids that I know.
Mm.
And when I ask them, like these men who are ahead of us in age, right? And I love learning from people, even strangers, right? Or even friends or whatever. And I always ask, like I went to a retirement party
Mm.
for my father-in-law a couple months ago, and all of his friends were there,
Mm-hmm.
and family members were there. And people were coming up to me because I also have a new book coming out here in a couple months called
Oh,
Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood.
exciting.
And thank you. Yeah. And people were asking me about the book,
Yeah.
what'd you write about? What'd you put in there? Like all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I put this, and I was like, and I'd always kick it back to them, because they were ahead of me in life. I was like, let me ask you. I was like, if you had to do fatherhood all over again, or if you were to give me any advice or give yourself any advice, what would you have done? And dude, I am not even kidding. 7 out of 10 answers were I would have spent more time with my kids and less time at work. It was some
Hmm.
sort of theme around that where it
Yeah.
was more time.
Yeah.
And here's a statistics. You're obviously, you love numbers, but here's a statistic. And the audience has heard me talk about this many times, is 80% of our one-on-one time with our kids is gone by the time they're 12.
12. Wow.
By 12,
Wow.
yeah. And if you think about it, like I really kind of was like, that's kind of interesting. I wonder why that is. Well, the reason it is that is because it's 12 to 13. It's that age that they really enjoy spending more time with their friends.
Hmm.
Right? They want that time with their friends, and they're kind of out and about. And then once they get a driver's license or their buddies are driving, or they're out and about. And I see that with my 16-year-old and 14-year-old quite a bit. I'm like, wow, these times are precious.
Yeah.
I'll take this one step further. if you really think about the window of time for one-on-one time, and you think about that 80% rule of, 80% of our one-on-one time with our kids is gone by the time they're 12. If you really think about it, it's hard. I think just, it doesn't matter if you're a father or a mother. It's sort of hard to relate to a kid that's, 1 to 5 years old. And what I mean by that is, you can't really have conversations with them. They're very, very dependent on you. They really can't interact too terribly much. They're not like this little person just yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once they turn like 6 and 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, then they kind of become like this little person, right? This little girl, this little boy, and they can interact and they understand things and they see the world and they ask questions and they can have conversations. In my mind, I honestly think you have 6 beautiful years between the age of 6 and 12 that are really impactful, right?
Yeah.
That you can really interact with them and really maximize. And a lot of us miss that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you front loaded this so you can spend time with your kids. And does your wife work, or does she stay at home?
She also negotiated a severance in 2015. She's 3 years younger than me. And so when I left at 34, almost 35, I said, if I can survive for the next 3 years and, we're still okay, you too can negotiate a severance and, quote, retire early. And so she said, okay, well, we believe in equality. And so in 2015, I helped her negotiate a severance package and escape. And she's been escaped ever since. And now she's a full-time mom and she works on the back end with Financial Samurai. A lot of stuff to do on the back end, like taxes and responding to people and editing and stuff. But it's just she and I, and we just kind of go about things as free as possible. Just try to be as light as possible.
Oh my gosh. Do you do this negotiation training for people? Like, do you coach people on how to get these severance packages?
Well, the funny thing is that in 2012, I did write an ebook called How to Engineer Your Layoff, Make a Small Fortune by Saying Goodbye. And it's about how to negotiate a severance package. Because if you think about it, if you're going to quit a job that you don't like, or you want to go on sabbatical or retire early, you might as well try to negotiate. There's no downside. Yeah. But I think a lot of people are lost, that they don't want to face, confrontation or whatever. So they'll just say 2 weeks notice, see you later. Or maybe they'll just leave because they're so afraid of confrontation.
Wow, man. That's pretty cool, man. I've never heard anybody do that. That is quite maybe you should be the severance package samurai. I don't know. No. Well, tell us about your book, Buy This, Not That.
Yeah, well, Buy This, Not That. I started writing it in early 2020. And I had this philosophy where I was thinking, well, I didn't want to write another book because it's so hard to write one. But I thought, well, I'm going to regret not writing this book because I got a decent offer by the folks at Portfolio Penguin Random House. And I said, you know what? I want to try to do something productive during the pandemic. In 10, 20 years from now, people are going to ask me, what the heck did you do during the pandemic? And I'm going to say, I wrote a damn book, and to help you and everybody who wants to read it achieve financial freedom sooner rather than later, but also to tackle some of life's biggest dilemmas, because money is just a means to an end. And we're all going to face all these crazy dilemmas, and we're all going to have some kind of doubt in our heads. And I wanted to provide a framework using a 70-30 decision-making philosophy, where it says that if you believe with a 70% probability or greater, it's the right choice, you go for it, while having the humility and humbleness, knowing that you're going to get it wrong, 20, 30% of the time. But unless it's death, you're going to learn from your mistakes and get better. And so some of the great topics that I love talking about in the book towards the end is on parenthood, is on, whether you should have children sooner or later, whether you should marry for money or marry for love, whether you should send your kids to private school or public school, and so forth.
I'm just, I agree, man. Your first chapter, find the happiness equation, right? Your very first sentence is, what's the point of money anyway? We all want to be rich, but why? To be free to live our lives on our own terms and in the way that energizes us. So the happiness equation, and that first sentence, I think really, really hits a lot of people because many of us are chasing like, I need to make more money.
Yeah.
And then when we really boil it down of why, it's some people can't answer that. Do you know, by the way, do you know Grant Sabatier? He wrote the book called Financial Freedom. Okay. His publisher is Penguin as well. One of the things that he talks about this element a little bit, and it wasn't up until a couple of years ago that, Dad Edge really has exploded and things are going extremely well. And, I've often, early on in my career, I wanted to make more money. So I felt at ease about providing for my family. I didn't want to be stressed, right? I didn't want to feel just this crazy sense of urgency, like that we never had enough. And once I realized that, like we realized a couple of years ago, we actually made a family mission statement that states experiences over stuff. So many of us, in the American culture, we want to accumulate stuff. But our family, what we want to do is accumulate experiences. So, like for instance, we don't buy crazy cars in this family, right? We don't buy, I don't buy name brand clothes. The t-shirt I'm wearing, my wife is like, I just bought it a couple of years or a couple of days ago. My wife's like, oh, I really like that white t-shirt, that white neck t-shirt. She's like, where did you get that? I was like, Target. She's like, really? She's like, it looks so nice. I was like, yeah, it came with 3 others in a package.
Half the battle is being fit to look good in your clothes.
That's right. But this whole happiness equation thing, a lot of us are chasing possessions, but I would argue that chasing possessions probably isn't necessarily the way to go. And it's more or less, I think, when it comes to, like, let's just say your main motivation was, I want to make more money to have more stuff. But I think a lot of us, once we get to the point where we have funds, that we have a choice now, we can buy that really nice car if we really want to. It really never was about the really nice car.
Yeah.
It was about the ability to choose whether or not I wanted to buy it. And some of us will be like, well, now that I have the choice, I don't think I really wanted it after all.
Yeah.
But what to you, what's the happiness equation?
Well, the happiness equation is really reality minus expectations. So if you have high expectations, you're going to be setting yourself up for disappointment many more times. And so if you have low expectations, as I have for my entire life, you tend to be happier. I remember, working at McDonald's for $4 an hour, flipping the quarter pounders, opening up the store at 6 a.m., getting yelled at by a power hungry, tripping manager. And that was no fun, but that's all I knew. And then I said, well, let me go to the College of William and Mary, because it was only $2,800 in tuition back in 1995. And I said to myself, if I go to William and Mary, my expectations for getting a fantastic high-paying job is pretty low. And if I don't get one, I can always go back to McDonald's and pay back my parents at $4 an hour. Those were my expectations. Because my parents, that we grew up in a humble townhome. They drove an 8-year-old Toyota Camry. There's nothing fancy at all. But because I was able to get a job in finance in New York City, I was like, wow, I felt like I had won the lottery. So I didn't take those things for granted. And so happiness is it's hard to maintain a certain level. I think genetically, maybe 60-70% happiness is based on genetics. And then you can kind of float up or down, maybe a 1 or 2 point spread or band throughout your life. And I don't think it's a final target to achieve. It's always a work in progress, happiness.
Yeah, so as it relates to, what advice would you give men who, let's just say we're talking to the guy right now who's listening to this podcast and he's like, man, it's a little hard for me to make ends meet right now.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to figure out my whole happiness equation as it relates to finances. Where do we start?
Well, I think one thing we need to think about is progress. I think progress is my one-word definition of happiness. Wherever you start, whether you start with nothing, you start with $10, $1,000, 100,000, a million, so long as you're making positive progress towards some goal, that is happiness. Because as soon as you stop making progress, it starts getting mundane, it starts getting sad, it starts getting depressing that you're no longer going forward. So think about the progress where you are at, and also think about having an abundance mindset. So you know, when you start with nothing, or you have amazing amount of upside, think about it that way. The percentage gains could be huge. Going from 0 to 1 is massive. But if you have everything, it's much harder to progress. It's way harder to progress. So I truly believe you have to adopt an abundance mindset. There are literally trillions of dollars out there in the world for the taking. You need to deserve, you need to believe you deserve to be rich as well. There are literally people who have 10 million, 50 million, $100 million exit packages for running their companies into the ground. There are baseball players, NBA players who make tens of millions of dollars a year who refuse to play, not because of an injury, but because of something else. And so you've got to look at these examples and say, wait, they're making mega millions. Why can't I deserve to be rich as well? And it goes back to that idea of believing you deserve to be rich and asking for what you want. You know, we talked about negotiating a severance, and you said you had never heard of that. And it's, I think part of the reason why is because it's just a little different way of thinking, where you say, you know what, I deserve, if I can think about a win-win scenario, I deserve to leave with an exit package because I helped this firm make a lot more money than I cost. So it's really about taking a stance and believing in yourself that you deserve to be wealthy as well.
Whew. And I agree. I don't think a lot of people have that mindset. You know, perhaps we don't feel that we deserve it. Perhaps we just look at ourselves as a cog in a wheel, or maybe not valuable enough to our employers. So I love that, man. Your part 2 of your book is put your money to work. So you have chapters in here: follow a proper allocation model, optimize your investments, understand real estate, choose where to live for maximum wealth potential, and go long in real estate. So there's a lot of themes in here around investments. There's some themes in here, obviously, with real estate. What advice would you have for the stock market right now? And what advice would you have for real estate right now, especially since interest rates have really jumped over the past few months?
Yeah. Well, if we look at history, the S&P 500 since 1926 has generated about a 10% total annual return.
Right.
This including dividends. And so during those times, the average bear market means a 35% decline over a 12-month period. So that's the price of investing to get potentially 10%, is a bear market every 5 to 7 years. That's historical. So if you think about it that way, and you think about your long-term goals, we all should be continuously investing in the stock market in an asset allocation framework that I provide in Buy This, Not That. And the frameworks are based off your goals, your age, and how risk loving or risk averse you are. So long as you follow a framework and asset allocate based on percentages of your net worth, let's say it's 50% of your net worth to stocks, 30% to real estate, just keep going, because over the long term, things tend to turn out well. So in terms of the stock market, I think the worst in terms of the downturn is behind us. I think the bottom of the market is 3,666 on the S&P 500. And again, nobody knows the future. But the reason why I feel this is because inflation has peaked. And you're looking at the 10-year bond yield, the treasury bond yield, that has also peaked. I think second half of 2022 and 2023, inflation is going to continue to fade. And as soon as inflation fades and starts to fade, the analysts and the fund managers, all these people projecting earnings estimates going forward, have a greater confidence in where those earnings are going to go going forward. And so if you see also the labor market is also pretty strong. The latest numbers came out really strong for July. And so the combination of strong labor plus a declining inflation rate sets us up for a good environment for risk assets like stocks. Now, going on to real estate is a lagging asset class. It tends to go up after stocks and tends to fade after stocks. It's just slower because of transaction costs. It costs 5% to sell. You got to list your home, clean it, and so forth. So I think the real estate market is probably going to fade for the next 12 months. You're going to find opportunities 5 to 10% cheaper than
Hmm.
January 2022 highs. But after that, I think it's going to catch a bit again and it's going to resume its long-term upward trend. Historically, real estate generates about a 4 to 5% return a year, which is 1 to 2% above the historical inflation rate. And for the average person, I think real estate is the best investment to make because it's understandable, it's a tangible asset, provides shelter. And one of the recommendations I have in Buy This, Not That, and if, as fathers, is to one, not only own your primary residence and get neutral real estate. That means you're just going up and down with the market. But to think about accumulating rental properties, one per kid, and maybe even one per kid in your current neighborhood where you hope they will want to live. Because if you do that, by the time your kid is 20, 30, you might have paid off your property. And two, maybe more importantly, is that you'll provide some career insurance just in case they can't get a job, they can't afford to live on their own. They can manage the property, they can live in the property, and they might be able to live in your city near you so you can actually spend more time with them in their adulthood. Many birds with one stone are killed in this process. And so those are my thoughts on stocks and real estate right now.
You know, you have this amazing calm about you
Mm.
as you talk about this stuff. Because when it comes to stocks and investments and money and bear markets and all these things, I think for the average person, sometimes there's like this sort of element of, especially right now, uncertainty, stress, maybe even a little bit of panic, like what's going to happen. But you're just like just the way you talked about the history of the stock market since 1926 and the bear markets. And a lot of people, I think they look at their portfolios right now and they literally think the world is coming to an end. Right?
It's totally understandable.
Yeah. I got to sell everything.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, my financial advisor, so I'm really, really, really big and passionate about teaching my kids about money, financial literacy. My two oldest boys have custodial accounts and
Nice.
they invest in the market and they come with me every quarter to my financial review, and they have their financial review.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and my kids ask questions. I'm like,
That's
this is your
great.
opportunity. And that's one thing that my financial advisor shared with my boys because, like my portfolio took a hit and so did theirs.
Yeah.
And he basically had a very similar message as you did. And he brought out the chart. He's like, if you look at it, here are the bear markets and here's how long they last. But over time, this is what it did. And you can actually see the years and everything like that, which I thought was really, really cool.
Tell your kids the great thing about losing money now is that they don't have a lot of money. So it's great to lose money
Right.
now. And just as, I mean, imagine if you had millions of dollars and you're losing, money. So just tell them to be thankful that they don't have a lot of money. They probably won't appreciate that a little because to them, that's all the
Yeah,
money they have. But
exactly.
it's something they'll appreciate in the future. Trust me on
Yeah. Like, Dad, I lost $400. I'm like, I know, I get it. I get it.
that.
Um, as we wrap up the show here, I want to talk about part 4 of your book because the last 3 chapters are invest in your education, nurture your love, and live like a financial samurai. If you could encapsulate investing in education, nurture your love, and live like a financial samurai, what does that mean to the reader?
I think I wrote maybe 150 pages on those subjects. So let
Yeah.
me think how I can summarize that. Well, I believe education will set us all free. When I graduated from college, I said, I'm never going to go back to school. That was like a waste of time. That took too long. But as I'm older now, I realize, wow, the education that you receive and that you continuously learn helps give you confidence and helps you take action to make right choices. And that action can be all the world. It can change your life for the better. So really continuously focus on improving your knowledge, taking action. Education is so important. It's one of the best gifts. Maybe the best gift we can give our children is education. So really focus on that. Be involved in your kids' learning. Teach them everything you know. One of the reasons why I want to hold Financial Samurai for the next 10, 15 years is because I want to teach my kids about communication skills, writing, verbal, doing finances, marketing, all that stuff. Education, so important. Nurture your love. Nurture your love. At the end of the day, you can have all the money in the world, but if you have nobody to spend that money with, who cares? I don't care. It would be such a lonely existence. Not only nurture your love with the person you care about the most, including your children, but nurture your love with your friends. Check up on your friends because everybody has issues they're dealing with, and just reach out. If you haven't reached out to a friend for 6 months to a year, go ahead and reach out. Nurture that love with your friends. And then finally, to live like a financial samurai, there are many points at the end of the chapter. But one of the key messages I have is to never fail due to a lack of effort, because effort requires no skill. And the theme behind that is to think, look, you can fail because someone was genetically smarter than you, or they're just taller so they could dunk the basketball over you, or whatever. But you can't fail because you didn't try your best. Because if you failed because you didn't do your best, you're going to look back on your life with a lot of regret. And I don't want anybody to look back on their life with regret. So the power of the book, Buy This, Not That, is to help people never say, if I knew then what I know now, my life would be different. Because I'm literally sharing with you my experiences and the perspectives of thousands of others, what I think the right course of action is. And then you can make your own decision. But at least you're empowered with that knowledge in a book to make better choices going forward.
I love how you ended the book. I mean, because that is absolutely beautiful. I read a quote. Actually, it was on a meme on Instagram. And you know how you're scrolling Instagram and then you see something and you stop and you're like, this really just hit me right in the heart. It was this photo of this old man. He was sitting on a park bench and he had his back to the camera, and you could tell he's old just by the way he's sitting. And he's looking out at like this kind of pond, and he's all by himself. And the meme stated, some people are so poor, all they have is their money. And, if you think about it, finances, right? 50% of the US divorce rate, 50% of the divorces that happen are due to financial arguments, stress, all these things. And even as individuals, we tend to completely and totally freak out over money. Or if we're really, really wealthy, we just, keep consuming, keep making money. But I think you really need to strike that balance of making sure that you don't forget about your family along the way, that you maximize and cultivate these amazing relationships with family, kids, marriage, friends, all these things that are so important. I'm really happy that you included that in your book. I think that's really meaningful. As we wrap up here, Sam, this has been awesome, by the way. And I love your demeanor, how you even talk about this. You have this very calming way about you that I think makes the listener feel at ease when it comes to thinking about their finances or thinking about them differently. But where can men find you, connect with your, grab a copy of your book?
Yeah,
if they want more.
If you want to support and read the book, you can go to financialsamurai.com/BTNT for Buy This, Not That. Or you can go check out my free newsletter at financialsamurai.com/news, NEWS. Those are the easiest ways. You can also Google any topic in finance and plus Financial Samurai, and you'll find probably I've hit that topic over the past 13 years. And if you leave a comment, I read all the comments out of all the 2,500 plus posts that I've written since 2009.
Wow.
So don't be shy.
Very cool. Well, gentlemen, not to worry. You won't have to look far. You can head over to thedadedge.com/388 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/388 for this show. Sam, this has been awesome, man. I wish you nothing but continued success. Question I have for you is, I know how these publishers, how they operate. Is there another book in the future that we could possibly look forward to?
It was 10 years between my first book and second book. And my editor who reached out to me, I didn't get a literary agent. He just reached out to me at the end of 2019. I think he's chomping at the bits. Is that the term? To try to, come up with a new book idea. He has it in his wings, but he just wants me to breathe. And so maybe in a year or two. But there's this one thing I actually want to ask you, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
Actually, it's a story about how hard it is to be a dad. And it's something that I thought about. This was about biology and evolution and all that. The first 5.5 years of being a full-time dad has been really, really difficult for me because
Sure.
I went all in, and I don't think my kids really appreciated that because mom was also stay-at-home mom. When it was a choice between mom and I, they would tend 80% of the time to go with mom.
Hmm.
And I guess my question to you and to other readers is, did you feel that as dads, that sting and that rejection, those daggers in your heart when you tried so hard to be present?
Totally. And by the way, thanks for the question. Yeah, absolutely. What I've noticed, now that we're 4 boys deep in this, right?
Hmm.
16, 14, 8, and 6. So I'm out of that 5-year-old realm. But
Hmm.
what I've noticed is from up until the age of 5, they always want a mom. You
Right.
know, it,
Biologically made sense. They were the
yeah,
food source. They've always been there.
yeah. It's interesting. Here's what I have. I have one hack that
Hmm.
changed the game for all my boys.
Yeah.
Literally changed everything when it came to who they would go to, right? And not to say that my wife and I are in competition or anything like that, but I think men in general are used to their kids going to mom for a lot
Yeah.
of things, and then you're kind of like, man, am I just kind of here in the background?
Yeah.
Like,
Chopped liver.
yeah. So let me just share that we experienced the same thing. I experienced the same thing you did up until the age of
Hmm.
5. When all my boys turned 6, I started doing one-on-one trips with them. And
One-on-one. Nice.
yeah, one-on-one trips. And traditionally what I've done, and now I've done it with all 4 boys because I literally just took my 6-year-old on this trip a couple months ago. I would take them to Chicago. Chicago is a great place for me just because like it's an hour flight from where I live. There's lots to do. I took them to the Shed Aquarium, the planetarium. We go to Millennium Park. We
Nice.
do all this kind of fun stuff. And I'd really be intentional, put the phones down, get to know them on a whole new level. We would come back from that trip. And this was something I never did the trip for the result of them wanting to be with me more. But I did the trip because I wanted to have an experience with them. I wanted to create memories with them. But
Yeah.
what I've noticed with all 4 boys, as soon as we got back from that trip, suddenly they really want to be around me. And all my wife is, she'll even tell you she's the one who's like,
Yeah.
they always want you,
Mm.
for the most part. They'll go to my wife for a lot of things, but they'll also come to me for a lot of things.
Mm.
My 8-year-old in particular, he's right at this age where he only wants daddy. Like,
Mm.
like he is a daddy's boy through and through. But I think a lot of it's really changed when I did something where I would call it an immersion experience where we're
Hmm.
not in our realm of our house, right? We're not in the everyday grind. We're not doing the thing where we just eat dinner at the dinner table. We're sharing in an experience
Yeah.
together those memories will last a lifetime. And then what I've also done over the years is I've taken each one of them on one-on-one trips throughout the years, whether it be in the mountains or whether it be to California. Like I said, before you and I got started, I took my oldest to in 2018 to San Francisco. That was our one-on-one trip.
Hmm.
And that boy will tell you that, to this day, that was one of his most favorite trips
Mm.
because of the experiences that we had. But
That's
when it
great.
comes to really locking in like that bond, I think that there's something to be said about like getting away with dad, even if it's for a day or two, even if it's a staycation, right? Where
Yeah.
you're just not around mom and you're not around your most common elements. But that's what really changed everything for me.
No, that's great. It's
Yeah.
good to look forward to. I feel like there's some kind of evolutionary aspect where the rejections we experience from our children when they're 1 to 5, it's kind of like a force to push us out of the house to go make some money so that the family survives. Because what other reason why, but obviously, mom is clearly an important factor and the food source for the first couple of years. So I appreciate that. because it's been a hard journey being a
Yeah.
stay-at-home father, especially during the pandemic. It's like, wow, you try your best. The harder you try, the more pain that dagger feels. So I'll keep that in mind. I'll definitely do the one-on-one trips. I'm looking forward to
Just take them to Alcatraz and just say, if you don't
it.
start hanging out with me, you're going to be in one of these cells. I'm just going to leave
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh man, this is so cool. I really enjoyed this, Sam. So like I said, guys, and by the way, thank you for that question. That's really cool. I
I
appreciate you
appreciate it.
asking. Gentlemen, like I said, head on over to thedadedge.com/388 for this show. And like I said, I'll have all the links in there if you want to connect with Sam. Obviously, he's a genuine, amazing individual. Go out and live legendary. Take care.